Let's play a game. How many of you feel that democracy is struggling these days? Please raise your hand. 20% approximately. How many of you feel that everything is okay with democracy? It's a fine system. Please raise your hand. Oh my God, okay, a couple of you. How many of you think that democracy in our century is totally rotten or broken? Raise your hand. No pessimists in the house. Very good news, in fact, proving the idea that somehow in this building we are existing in a bubble. Because the mindset of the worldwide perception on democracy shows, following various statistics and scientific surveys, that we today are in a very historical moment when in democratic countries there are more of those who dislike democracy as such than are happy about it. Speaking purely statistically, the year 2017 is the moment when 52% of dissatisfied in general public are taking over from 48% of those who are satisfied with democracy. If you think that democracy is a great, grand thing, then you are minority at a particular moment. I will test with you only one single, my humble experience, small idea today. What is the reason behind this dissatisfaction? And maybe I will try to bring some light how to correct that. And let me, of course, tell you one story. This is my father, little Valdis. He looks like me, only in black and white. He was born in 1946, but my story goes back to 1958, when he was 12 years old, and he was in the 5th grade. He was a pupil in a school in Latvia under Soviet regime. He was a typical Soviet pupil. Nevertheless, in the 5th grade, little Valdis had a spirit of democracy. He had the guts for brave action. He was inspired by radio, Free Europe, Voice of America, and even more by kitchen talk in his family. And he did, in a 5th grade, partly brave, partly risky, and partly childishly stupid thing to do in Soviet Union. Together with the two classmates, they came together after school in a very short time window while parents are at work. They made their secret group and they made 20 flyers with handwritten messages to paste around the district. Those flyers contained pretty challenging texts like "Long live democracy," "Latvia for Latvians," "Soviets go home," "Death to Khrushchev." There was nothing personal in between me and Khrushchev, my father said. It was just an action, taking something in our hands, going out. We were 3 musketeers of democracy. Child's play. 2 weeks later, there was a sudden exam in the class. A public servant, a stranger, came to the school and dictated a very specific text for children to repeat in a written way. Little Valdis felt that something's wrong, but he was just a kid. So he took the dictate from a stranger. Handwritings were compared, and all three heroes were identified. And in this particular moment, all three of them were invited, together with the parents, kindly invited, to the corner house, which is given name to headquarters of KGB in this region. Child's play was over, and my father remembers only two things, specific one, from this evening. The first is his mother was shaking, because mother knew that invitation to KGB could be a one-way ticket. More than this, several family members already were sent to Siberia, so it was a very high stakes of the child's game at the night, because nothing was a child's game in the Soviet Union. Second thing my father remembers, that mother dressed him like an onion. 2 sweaters, 2 shirts, 2 pants, 2 socks, more gloves than necessary, because it could be cold on the way to Siberia. And children didn't survive well the conditions on the way to Siberia. In fact, many of them didn't survive at all. Interrogation was all night long. There was a lot of whys and whats and who's behind the crime against the regime. But because nobody was behind against the regime except the 3 children playing around, when the sun was rising up, they let them just go, but with one sentence: in future, you kids better stay home than play around with politics. And I believe my father took this advice. Since that moment, this particular night, he haven't committed any political act. Never. Even voting. Even in free Latvia. 30 years after collapse of Soviet Union. He is mainly looking through the glass of television and saying to me from time to time, "Martin, remember, you should never step into politics." He was broken that time. And I'm, of course, asking him the same question. How do you feel about democracy? And he is saying, your democracy is becoming worse and worse every day. My idea here to test today with you is, maybe we feel democracy is bad because we perceive it in a limited way. My father was limited by traumatic experience of regime. My students are limited by habit, how they take in information. But they both are limited, framed through one sense, vision. And there is largely described effect in the psychology. It's called informational overload. Take one frame. overload this with any kind of information, but do this intensively in a limited timetable. Make, watch this frame. And receiver, us, is becoming emotionally vulnerable. Speaking in more simple words, unhappy at the end of the day. It's commonly known in a psychology, but it's rarely discussed when we speak why democracy is perceived as it is today. So I have an offer for you here, linking together political science and everyday routine every one of us can do. I offer you to feel democracy through other senses. Not only vision, balance the vision of eyes with smelling, tasting, touching, and hearing. And this is uncharted territory, so follow me carefully. You can smell democracy in so many ways. I'm not speaking about smelling politicians. Well, from time to time, we know there's something fishy about them, but here is another kind of philosophy. Smelling is the perception you have to do slowly. Like smelling the morning coffee, taking in, sipping, reading news, smelling, sipping, reading news, smelling, sipping, reading news from top to the bottom. Taking everything what you see around with a sense of smell in, which means slowly. Smell anchors our memories in the best way, and smell anchors us to the present moment. Might be one day there will be a book, How Coffee for Takeaway Killed Democracy. Maybe I will write this book. But smell democracy, taking it in slowly. The same goes for tasting. Democratic state is not a fast food. It's a slow food. But taste is even so much more. Taste democracy as a process yourself. Take a part in any kind of organization where there are more than 3 people. And there is a mechanism you have to taste to make a decision, collective decision. And those are the first tastes of what does it mean to make democratic decision at all. Changing things in democracy, it's not an easy game. It's not, because it makes a lot of people together to make a common thing. But when you do that, it tastes wonderfully. Well, imagine just pizza with one egoistic ingredient, like pizza with single shrimp on that. It doesn't look tasty, it isn't. But if there's plenty of everything, which democracy is, there is the taste. Touching democracy, touch politicians. And that's in a very direct meaning. This is unique about democracy. You can get in the one room with those who are governors, politicians, and touch them. Try to touch the king 2 centuries ago. It's impossible, but you can get to anyone today, in fact. Simple handshake. Simple handshake. I would go even further. Simple handshake and look in the eyes to remember the eye color of politician. This means to get to this, you have to get up, you have to find a calendar where you have to approach, you have to find a way to be present. You have to be active. That's a pretty deep philosophy if you take as a mark to touch politician. It's easy in Latvia. You can touch anyone in Latvia you want. From political field, you can find the prime minister in movie theater and president in a classical theater. Different tastes for them. But you can get to them. What to do in the United States of America? Take as a purpose, at least once, to be in a single room with a political candidate. Town hall meeting, for instance. And you're gonna feel this differently, because there is no Photoshop for the reality. And finally, hearing democracy. Hear the long talks. Here's the secret from my side as a political practitioner also. The first minutes you speak with any politician in political interview, they are fake. They just respond with the slogans, with the well-crafted messages. It's a game. But after 1 hour, anyone is becoming tired. And you can hear the change in the voice. And you can hear the change in the content they are delivering. Listen for the long talks, podcasts, interviews. True nature comes with the time. There's other hearing, which I call listening. Listen for the values. Are there any values behind the political campaign slogan? But to know what to listen for, you have to know what the values are. So you have to listen in yourself what's valuable for you. To really test that, I have a challenge for you. Challenge democracy, like challenge quitting smoking from the new year. Challenge democracy from this moment on. At least once practice all senses in democracy. Try to touch, try to smell, try to taste, try to hear. And it certainly works for me, but I am not the only one. My father again. Me and my father, some 6 weeks ago, walking around the district, and on the other side of the street, the former politician in the 90s, she was very, very, very popular, the Speaker of Parliament, for the father's generation, something explosively far, far away. Today, she is a professor in my university, so she knows me. She's going there, I'm going with the father. Father hates everyone, and she's going there. And she says, well, hello, from across the street. I say, hello, professor. She was in a good mood. It's a rarity. She was in a good mood. She's crossing the street, saying, well, hello, I'm shaking the hand. She's asking, is this your father? Yes, it is. She's shaking hand to my father. Then we have extremely pleasant conversation. A lot of compliments to me. Father's happy, she's happy, I'm happy. We're going home, and my father is unusually silent. Because usually he's commenting everything. And he's silent. And at the deep, deep evening, he's saying, you know, your professor, I'm already thinking, what? She's a real good politician. What a handshake. Real good politician. 3 words from my father's mouth. I felt like a little Valdis is back again with the belief in the good. If it works for my Father, it definitely can do so much more. Just test that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's feel democracy great again.